Book 8. We have talked quite a bit about the hatred that these characters feel towards Fyodor. And what I hear most often from students is how much they hate Fyodor. And so when you go into a novel and you know that the main character that's going to die is someone that no one wants to live, at least it doesn't cause you any sorrow when he actually dies. But we're getting to the point in the narrative in which he will die. He will be murdered. But what is horrifying for readers, or at least should be horrifying for us, is that we don't mind him dying. Now think about that for a second. We do not care that Fyodor dies. We want Fyodor to die. The rest of this book is going to make us complicit in that murder. And even though none of us lifted the hand to the old man, we are all going to feel the guilt that wanted that man dead. So be thinking about that and meditating on that as you read this section. This is going to be Mitya's fall, or Dmitri's fall. He's about to have to die to himself in these sections, and then we'll see if he rises up again. He has discovered that Grushenka has run off with her Polish officer. He is heartbroken. He doesn't know what to do, and he has a lot of sins to confess. We're going to hear about the money that he stole from Katerina, and how he's been lying about it, and how he's been just really in a point of desperation because of all the lies. And he's been worried about killing his father. I think since we saw him at the monastery where he actually confesses that why is such a man alive? And then when Zosima bows to Dmitri, he feels the guilt. He knows that he's capable of killing his father, and he runs away saying, "Oh God," runs out of that room. Well, now he is going to his father's in search of Grushenka. Again, I don't think he yet knows that she has run off with a Pole, but he's about to find that out. But he goes looking for Grushenka, and Fyodor opens the window and sticks his head out. "Grushenka, is it you? Is it you? Where are you, sweetie angel? Where are you?" Ugh. No one likes Fyodor. And he's listening. Mitya is listening to this, and he sees the whole of the old man's profile. This is important to look at the earthliness, the concreteness. We've been talking about love and how love in dreams versus active love, and active love is harder because of all the things you see of the person in their concreteness. Dmitri finds the old man's profile loathsome, the whole of his drooping Adam's apple, his hooked nose, his smiling and sweet expectation, his lips, all brightly lit from the left by the slanting light of the lamp shining from the room. And terrible, furious anger boils up inside of Mitya's heart. This was his rival, his tormentor, his whole life. And there's a furious anger, and he remembers a conversation at the gazebo with Alyosha 4 days before, in which Alyosha said, "How can you say you will kill father?" And he said, "I don't know, maybe I won't. I'm afraid that his face at that moment will become so hateful to me. I hate his Adam's apple, his nose, his eyes, his shameless sneer. I'm afraid I may not be able to help myself." And then it's ... We get some hint that perhaps it was not Mitya who killed Fyodor, because after the ... we say, "God was watching over me then," Mitya used to say afterwards. And that's when Gregory wakes from bed. But we have an actual break in the scene in which the camera doesn't show us whether he kills Fyodor or not. The old man, Gregory, at this point shouts, "Parricide!" And this is when Dmitri strikes down Gregory, and his head gets covered in blood, and he yells, "I've killed him, I've killed him." And he's overcome with this act. This is the act that really plagues him. Gregory, after all, earlier in the narrative we saw, took care of Mitya when Mitya was a little boy, and he didn't have a father because Fyodor was such a louse. And so this in some ways is more of a father to him than Fyodor has been, and he has struck him on the head, not out of hatred, but just in the franticness of this moment. So he runs off to go now find Grushenka, and everything that we see from Dmitri this point forward should remind us of things that we saw earlier in the book about people taking on the role of a child. The more that Mitya becomes childlike in these scenes, the more hope we should begin to feel for him. You will see lots of different mentions of Mitya, like a child, smiling like a child, somewhat childlike. And pay attention to that, because I think Dostoevsky is giving us hints here that perhaps it was not Mitya who committed this crime, or at least there's a lot of repentance in his heart in these moments. And he's driving with Andrei, and he begins to ask the peasant what he thinks of hell. He begins to worry over his soul, and he asks whether he himself will go to hell. Andrei answers, "I don't know, my dear, depends on you, because you see, sir, when the Son of God was crucified on the cross and died, he went straight from the cross to hell and freed all the sinners suffering there. And hell groaned because it thought it wouldn't have any more sinners coming. And the Lord said to hell, 'Do not groan, O hell, for all kinds of mighty ones, rulers, great judges, and rich men will come to you from all parts, and you will be as full as ever unto the ages, till the time when I come again.'" That's what he said. Of course, this is a legend, but it serves to show so Dostoevsky in his time period was surrounded by people who believed the peasants were the innocent class that had the most wisdom. And so you see a lot of writings like Tolstoy always shows the peasants to be the smartest and the wisest of us all. And in this one, we kind of get almost a parody of it, because this doesn't really answer the question that Dmitri's asking, but it does show us the mercy of God, that he can even go into hell where you are. But it also convicts Dmitri, because here he is one of the mighty of the earth who is going to have to lower himself if he's not going to enter into hell. It's a paradox. If he does not want to descend into the lowest, he must see himself as needing to descend into the lowest. And so he begins to ask, "Will you forgive me, Andrei?" "Why should I forgive you? You never did anything to me," Andrei responds. "No, for everyone, will you forgive me for everyone?" So we see that he's adopting some of the things that we've heard Zosima tell Alyosha, that we are all responsible for all, and we all need forgiveness from all. And he begins to understand this, but it comes to full force when he has his dream. He's confronted by the police, he's confronted by the prosecutor, and he begins to ask, to admit that he is guilty of the blood of Gregory, but not the blood of Fyodor. But then, of course, no one knows who could have killed Fyodor. And even when they say Smerdyakov, no, it couldn't have been Smerdyakov, because he was laying out cold because of his epileptic seizures. And so here again we have Smerdyakov having this connection with Fyodor, right? With this idea that you could fake your epileptic seizures. Fyodor Dostoevsky did have epilepsy. So we have these connections between him and his most villainous character. Mitya gives his version of the story, and this is on page 472. "Whether it was someone's tears or God heard my mother's prayers." Again, we have these reflections on the Madonna, the intercessory prayers of, in this sense, Adelaida's prayers, but also the sense of the Madonna prayer. "Or a bright spirit kissed me at that moment, I don't know, but the devil was overcome." And do we remember him saying earlier to Alyosha at the gazebo that the battlefield is the heart of man between the devil and God? "And the devil was overcome. I dashed away from the window and ran to the fence." So he confesses to much. He confesses to his lies. He confesses to his shame. He's not holding anything back, but he does not confess to the murder of his father. He falls asleep after all of these interrogations, having confessed everything that he possibly could, having earned back the love of Grushenka, and he falls asleep and has a strange sort of dream, somehow entirely out of place and out of time. It seemed he was driving somewhere in the steppe, in a place where he had served long ago. He's being driven through the slush by a peasant in a cart with a pair of horses, and it seems to Mitya that he is cold. It is the beginning of November, and snow is pouring down in big wet flakes that melt as soon as they touch the ground, and the peasant is driving briskly, waving his whip nicely. He has a long, fair beard, and he's not an old man, maybe around 50. Do you get all the particularity of these dreams? This is very important in Dostoevsky, to contrast the particularity of things with the abstract, the ethereal. So again, always keep in mind the love and dreams. When Dostoevsky draws out the details, we are supposed to sink into that moment. In some ways, we are being trained to become more of those who love actively in the particular, rather than those who live in the abstract love and dreams. And so he's training us. So pay attention to these things. He's not an old man, maybe around 50, dressed in a gray peasant coat. And there's a village nearby, black huts, and all the huts are burned, just charred beams sticking up. And there are peasant women, many women, a long line of them, thin-waisted, their faces a sort of brown color. And there's especially a bony one, tall, maybe about 40, but maybe only 20, with a long, thin face. And in her arms is a baby crying. Her breast must be dried up, not a drop of milk. And the baby is crying, reaching its bare arms out, its little fists blue from the cold. Why are they crying? Mitya asks. The wee one, the driver answers. It's the wee one crying. But why is it crying? Mitya asks. Why don't they wrap it up? The wee one's cold. Its clothes are frozen. But why? Mitya will not leave off. They're poor, burnt out. They've got no bread. They're begging for their burnt down place. No, Mitya still seems not to understand. Why are they standing there? Why are they poor? Why the wee one? Why the steppe is bare? Why don't they embrace and kiss? Why don't they sing joyful songs? Why are they blackened with black misery? Why don't they feed the wee one? And he feels within himself, though his questions have no reason or sense, he wants to ask them in just that way. He's having the same kind of realization that Ivan had, but from an emotional or romantic place. In the same way that Ivan kept those newspaper clippings about the suffering children and is asking why. Well, Ivan turns it into a judgment against God. Dmitri feels it deeply, and he feels the injustice of people's suffering. And when he feels this, he also feels a tenderness, such as he has never known before, surging up in his heart. And not in the same way that Ivan did, to love all those children who he does not know, but he wants to weep for this children, and he wants to do something for this wee one, so that the wee one will no longer cry, so that the black and dried up mother of the wee one will not cry either, so there will be no more tears. And he wants this, and his whole heart blazes towards it, and it turns into a desire for life. In the same way, we've juxtaposed these images of the Madonna, the mother love image, with the image of the Sodom, the sensual or the consumer-driven ways of approaching beautiful things. Now we also have a contrast between the Sodom love, the consumer love that makes you alienated and alone, is also what leads you towards suicide. Ivan has said he will throw down his cup when he hits 30. And Dmitri, we know, brought the pistols in order to kill himself. He was going to put a bullet in his brain until he felt the love again of Grushenka. In some sense, she gave him a little onion, as she did to Alyosha, just by showing love and compassion. And here he wakes up wanting to live, and who knows whether that dream would have been fulfilled if it had not been that he wakes up and it suddenly struck him that there was a pillow under his head. Here he is about to be an arrested murderer, a parricide. People think that he killed his father. He has blood on his hands. And they put a pillow under his head to take care of him. Who put that pillow under my head? What sort of good person did it? He exclaims with rapturous gratitude what kindness had been shown to him. It's the gratefulness that's the response to these acts of kindness. When Alyosha leaves that vision and leaves the monastery, he feels overcome with the gift of joy. He's grateful for the way that Grushenka has treated him, and he wants to pour that out and kiss the earth and weep and love. And what happens here is the same with Dmitri. He awakens, he receives this gift, another little onion in our story, from an unidentified man, and his whole soul is shaken with tears. And he decides that he's going to accept whatever comes. He tells Alyosha in prison at another point that even after this moment, after this has happened, because of this dream, right, later on he will say, it's for the wee one that I will go to prison. Because everyone is guilty for everyone else, for all the wee ones, because there are little children and big children, and all people are wee ones, and I'll go for them, because there must be someone who will go for them. I didn't kill Father, but I must go. I accept. And remember the rebellion of Ivan. I reject. It's that I don't accept the ticket. I respectfully return the ticket. And here he's accepting this. We are all guilty, and he's accepting that guilt.